guys, we're back to another episode of Off the Shelf. I'm Roast and HD, and this time what we found off the shelf was...
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. A rumbling sound, then 3 sharp knocks.
Babadook, duk, duk.
I'm sick, Sam. I need help. It is real.
The Babadook, a film by Jennifer Kent. It was released in 2014, an Australian elevated horror film. And I will say that also, let me say, look at that, it's a really cool part of the cover. Isn't that neat? Isn't that dandy? But yeah, also the book in the movie is a flip book, so that's pretty neato, isn't it? But yeah, the film is really good, and I will say I was scared during the movie, but even when I was scared, I was like, yeah, this is some good shit. Like, whenever I was scared, I had, like, a smile like this across my entire face, because I like being scared, especially by a movie. And when a movie is actually scary, I'm not, like, horrified. I'm horrified, but I'm also just so happy, like, movies are also, like, horror movies can have horror in them. It's a fucking godsend. You know what I mean? Like, nowadays, horror movies, I mean, I'm not saying horror movies don't have the ability to be scary anymore. I just feel like nowadays horror movies don't really aim to be scary anymore. Because, I mean, most people would say, well, of course a horror movie should be scary. They're called horror. Not exactly. Nowadays, horror movies are more ridiculous in nature. You got your stupid slasher movies, your fucking dumbass comedy horror movies. You got your low budget SOV stuff, Love You Janice, and you got trash cinema, including that. You know, just bunch of random dumb horror movies. But stuff like this reminds me, tells me why a horror genre is called horror. This film is full of dread, suspense, and horror. That's why the genre was called horror in the first place. And it makes me so happy. Like, during the movie, I was so happy because I'm like, my God, a scary horror movie. Like, this movie was just so suspenseful. It's what I exactly want in a horror movie. It was suspenseful. It was full of dread. It was, like, it had a lot of, like, hopeless moments. The monster was intimidating and scary. Like, it's literally, in my opinion, a perfect horror movie. I just think there's no problems I had with it. And it was just amazing. Like, I don't know. I think this is probably one of my favorite horror movies after watching it. It's probably not my favorite, but it's definitely in the top 10. Definitely in the top 10. And it's like, so, quick plot synopsis is, so, there's a mother and a son, and, the father was killed, in a car accident the day the boy was born, and the mother is incredibly depressed and grief-stricken, and she's not a very good mother, but, I mean, how would she be? She's like, she lost her husband the day her child was born, and her child is not, like, very, normal. He's really weird. He doesn't really fit in, he's like, the other kids don't like him. He's really weird. He brought a crossbow to school, stuff like that. And the whole movie, well, not the whole movie, but then they find a book called The Babadook, where it tells, the legend, or what happens, like, what the Babadook is, and it traumatizes the boy instinctively. It's a lot of, honestly, if I was a kid his age, I probably also would have been traumatized. I'm not saying that, but if I was like 10 and I read that book, I'd be like, this shit's fucking cool. I don't know. But if I was his age, definitely would have also been traumatized. But yeah, gets traumatized, and then he starts believing in the Babadook, right? He starts, like, seeing the Babadook everywhere. He starts telling everybody about the Babadook. He starts telling his mom, I don't want the Babadook to hurt you, to the mom. And the mom just thinks that he's going crazy, right? She doesn't believe him. But then the Babadook starts, like, tormenting the mother and Samuel, who's the child, and they start tormenting them. He starts tormenting them, and you don't see the Babadook very often. And I'll get into that later, and I love that. I love that part. I love the monster being hidden. But yeah, then the mother, Amelia, she also starts to see the Babadook later on in the movie. And she's, like, going through a big mental spiral, and she's never getting any sleep. The Babadook is preventing them from going to sleep, and eventually, near the end of the movie, there's also, like, the book predicted that she would kill their dog, the boy, and then herself. That's what I think I said in my last video I'm not allowed to say that. Censor that out. She not alived herself. She not alived herself. But not in the movie. It said that she was gonna not alive herself. But yeah. So the mother, basically, both of them are being tormented by the Babadook, and by the end of the movie, she ends up unfortunately killing the dog, and she gets possessed by the Babadook. And she tries to kill the boy, but then the boy ties her up in the basement, and he's actually kind of smart. He's like a little Kevin McAllister against, like, a boogeyman. Because he has, like, traps set, and he ties her up, and she almost chokes him to death. And she lets go, and she fights the Babadook out. She has enough willpower to get the Babadook out of her, right? And then the Babadook drags the boy upstairs, because in the book it says you can't get rid of him. You can get rid of the Babadook. So he drags him upstairs, then she protects him, and, like, the Babadook comes out, and he's got his true form. Well, a little bit. You see a little bit of it. You don't see, like, his big one that they show in the flip book that I showed you earlier, but you see a little bit of it. Then, at the end of the movie, she confronts the Babadook, and she's not scared of him anymore. She's like, if you even touch my child, I will kill you. Do you understand? I will kill you. Right? And he's, like, trying to scare her, but then it's screaming at her, and then she screams at him, and then he falls to the ground. Like, he, like, gets at her with his arms like this, and then he falls to the ground. Right? And she, like, walks up to him, she's gonna, like, touch his hat, and then he, like, makes a noise, and he, like, retreats down to the basement. Right? And then it shows later on in the movie that he's still in the basement, and that she is feeding him, and she's, like, keeping him at bay in the basement. And basically keeping him down there like a caged animal. And it's a really, and then she's, like, happy with her son. It's his birthday, and they have, like, the psychiatrist over. And like, honestly, Samuel is great in the movie. He's, like, super funny, and he's super weird, but that's why I like him. And he just speaks his mind, and he's great. So the thing also I was gonna get to earlier, the Babadook is barely shown. Like, you see him, but you don't actually see his face often. You know, he's usually hidden by shadows and clever lighting. So you only see his face, like, a handful of times. And I think that's perfect. Like, keeps a mystique and mystery to the monster. And you don't really know what he is. And personally, what I think he is, I think he's a representation of depression and grief and anxiety, because you could tell that Amelia was very depressed. She was very grief-stricken, anxiety-filled, and the Babadook is kind of a, like, embodiment of her grief, and he's, like, he's not really a thing. He's more, as I said, an embodiment of her grief and how she can handle it. Like, by the end of the movie, because throughout the whole movie she's denying it. She's saying, oh, the Babadook isn't real. He's not real. You know what I mean? But by the end of the movie, she isn't in denial anymore, and she just keeps him at bay by accepting it. You know, acceptance. And not being scared of him. Because if you're so full of grief, anxiety, or depression, denying it is even worse than, like, it's just work. It's awful. You can't deny it because that'll make it worse. It'll just pile up. And she came to terms with it, and her grief was basically resolved, or at least it wasn't as bad by the end of the movie. And I just really think that's a really good a really good concept, and it was really executed amazingly in this film. I don't think that I had any problems with this movie. I think maybe I think also if you're a horror fan, go out watch this movie right now. And if you're just looking to watch like a scary movie, like a elevated horror movie, if you're trying to get into that stuff, watch this movie immediately. If you don't want to be spooked, maybe this isn't for you, because this movie is pretty spooky. So if you don't want to be spooked, I don't know why you're watching this video, but don't watch it. But if you want to have a good spook, if you want to have a good horror movie to watch, I highly recommend it. And, I don't give 10s out, but maybe it's just because I just watched it and I love it, but maybe I'll go back on this later on. But I think this is my first ever 10 out of 10. I don't think I have a single complaint for this film, and I do not give these out very often. So this movie's in a special club, alright? Highly recommend this film. 10s across the boards. Just fantastic film. A perfect horror film in my eyes. Go see it right now. Absolutely amazing. And, yeah. I've said my piece. I think I've said what I need to say. So, guys, hope you like this video. Subscribe, share with your friends, turn notifications on, comment down below how much you liked it. And, guys, I got a question for you. What is your favorite scary movie? Leave them down in the comments. And I've been Running Time HD. Signing off. Babadook, dook, dook. Restart. Let's restart.